Betrayal, deception, revenge. What you're about to hear is not fiction. I'm Booze, Nguyen, and every video on this channel is a confession, a scar, a buried truth. Subscribe if you're brave enough to hear the whole story. People used to say my brother Randy could walk into any room and make the air change. He had that kind of gravity, the kind that pulled people in without them even realizing it. When we were kids, I used to think he was born under a luckier star. I'd build the models, he'd sell them. I'd design the idea, he'd make everyone believe it was his. And I never minded. He was my brother. And in the Stonefield family, loyalty was everything. Our father, Gregory Stonefield, built the company from nothing. Stonefield Group, a sprawling real estate empire stretching from Manhattan to Miami. He was the kind of man who thought emotions were a weakness and profit margins were a moral compass. When he died 3 years ago, Randy became the natural successor. He was the eldest, the public face, the visionary. And I was, well, the silent partner, the analyst, the strategist, the one who kept the numbers from bleeding. We used to joke that he was the engine and I was the oil that kept it running. But even the best engines overheat when they forget what keeps them smooth. I remember the night everything began to change, the night Catherine Myers entered our lives. It was a charity gala at the Ritz-Carlton, one of those events full of tuxedos and false smiles. I had never liked those things, but Randy insisted I come. "You have to start showing your face more, little brother," he said, clapping me on the back. "Numbers don't make deals." "People do." He was already at the bar, surrounded by investors and models when I walked in. The chandelier light reflected off his cufflinks, and his laugh carried across the room like a promise. That was Randy, magnetic, confident, untouchable. Then I saw her. She stood near the silent auction table, studying a painting, a woman in crimson looking out over a dark sea. Her dress was simple, but the way she wore it made every man in the room notice. Her hair fell in loose curls, and her eyes, God, those eyes, sharp, searching like she was constantly calculating the odds of survival. I didn't know it then, but Catherine Myers was the storm that would drown us all. Randy saw her too. He excused himself from his circle, picked up 2 glasses of champagne, and walked straight toward her like he'd rehearsed the move. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, nodding toward the painting. She turned, smiled, not the shy kind, but the kind that knows exactly how much power it holds. "It depends," she said. "Beauty without context is just decoration." Randy laughed, charmed immediately. "Then maybe I should give it some context." Randy Stonefield. He offered his hand. Catherine Myers. Their handshake lasted a heartbeat too long. From across the room I watched. Something in me tightened, not jealousy, not yet. Just a quiet unease. Like watching a fuse being lit, unsure where it led. Later that night, Randy brought her over to introduce me. "Wiley, meet Catherine, she's with Crestline Consulting. Apparently, she's been fixing broken companies since she was 24. I smiled, polite. "Then you must be very good at finding cracks." Her eyes flicked toward me, amused. "Only the ones people pretend not to see." I should have taken that as a warning. Over the next few weeks, Catherine's name began to appear everywhere, in meetings, in Randy's calendar, in the late-night emails that used to come to me first. At first, I thought it was harmless. She was consulting for a merger we were planning with a property group in Texas. Randy said she was just helping streamline communication, but communication soon became decision-making, and decision-making became influence. It's strange how betrayal doesn't announce itself. It seeps in like water under a door, silent, patient, unstoppable. One afternoon, I stopped by Randy's office to discuss the upcoming quarterly report. He wasn't alone. Catherine was there, leaning over his desk, pointing at a presentation on his laptop. Her perfume hit me before her voice did something expensive, deliberate. "Oh, Wiley," Randy said, smiling like he hadn't seen me in months. "You've got to see what Kat's done with the restructuring plan. It's genius." Kat. He was calling her Kat now. "I didn't know we were restructuring," I said, forcing a smile. "Just some internal reorganization," she said smoothly. "To improve efficiency. Too many layers of approval slow down progress." I nodded, though something about her tone made me feel like I was one of those layers. "Interesting," I said. "And how do you define progress, Ms. Myers?" She tilted her head, smiling. "When the right people end up in the right seats." Randy laughed. I didn't. That night I couldn't sleep. I went through the company server logs, checking the new proposals Catherine had worked on. She was sharp. No doubt her analysis was precise, her language confident. But she'd also made subtle shifts, transferring certain assets under divisions Randy controlled directly, not through the joint trust. It was clever, too clever. I called Randy the next morning. "Hey, I looked through the restructuring plan. There are some things we should probably discuss. He cut me off. Wiley, relax. Kat knows what she's doing. She's helped half of Fortune 500. Don't start micromanaging. I'm not micromanaging, I said. I'm protecting the company. He sighed. You're always so paranoid. Not everyone's trying to screw us okay. But they were. They just hadn't finished yet. Weeks turned into months. Randy and Catherine became inseparable in meetings, at lunches, even family dinners. Mother adored her. Finally, someone who can keep Randy grounded, she said once, laughing. I wanted to tell her the truth, that the woman she welcomed into our home was slowly pulling us apart, but I couldn't. Not without proof. And so I watched. I observed how Catherine praised Randy in public, then whispered suggestions in private. How she turned small misunderstandings between us into subtle wedges. Once during a board presentation, she casually mentioned that I'd been overly cautious with the Asian market expansion. Randy looked at me like I'd betrayed him. After the meeting, he said, You've got to take more risks, Wiley. The company's stagnating. I stared at him stunned. The plan he was calling stagnant was the same one we'd drafted together just a month ago. Catherine had rewritten the script, and Randy was already reciting her lines. One night I found them on the balcony outside Randy's penthouse. The city spread below like a sea of electric veins. I was supposed to deliver some documents, but when I saw them standing there close enough to share breath, I froze. She was laughing, her hand on his chest. He looked younger, freer, the way he used to when we were kids, and the world hadn't turned into a contest. And for a second I hated her for making him happy. Then I hated myself for thinking that. I turned to leave, but Catherine's voice stopped me. Can't sleep either, she said. Turning around, her expression unreadable. I was just dropping this off, I said, holding up the folder. Randy grinned. Man, you've got to learn to unplug. Come join us. I didn't. I muttered an excuse and left my chest tight. That was the moment I realized I'd lost him not to death, but to devotion. It all came crashing down a few weeks later. At the quarterly board meeting, Randy announced a new project, the Horizon Initiative, a luxury eco-complex outside San Francisco. It was massive, risky, and completely unlike anything we'd discussed. I scanned the documents. The projections were wildly optimistic. Randy, this plan assumes a 40% ROI in the first year, I said carefully. That's not realistic. Catherine smiled from across the table. Sometimes vision requires faith, Wiley. Faith doesn't pay contractors, I replied. The boardroom went silent. Randy's jaw tightened. After the meeting, he pulled me aside. You embarrassed me in front of the board. I was trying to protect you. From what? From success? Or from admitting that maybe you're not the only smart one anymore? The words hit harder than I expected. That was when I knew the brother I once admired was gone, replaced by a man who saw me as competition. That night, as I stood in my office staring out at the skyline we'd built together, I realized the irony. Our father had always said family was the foundation of everything. But even the strongest foundations crack when you pour poison between the stones. And Catherine, she was poison in silk. Still, I couldn't hate Randy. Not yet. Because somewhere deep down, a part of me still believed he'd come to his senses. That blood would mean more than power. But life, especially in our family, had a way of proving how wrong love could be. That was the last night I thought of Randy as my brother. After that, he was just another man standing between me and the truth. There's a particular silence that lives inside betrayal, not loud or sudden, but quiet and steady like a slow leak from a broken pipe. You don't notice it until everything around you starts to rot. For me, it began the morning I found out that half my department had been reassigned without my approval. I walked into my office expecting to see familiar faces, analysts, coordinators, project leads, and instead found empty desks, unplugged monitors, and boxes of packed files stacked against the wall. What the hell happened here? I asked Melissa, my assistant, who looked like she'd been holding her breath all morning. Mr. Randy said there's a new structure taking effect this week, she stammered. All financial oversight now reports directly to his office. Miss Myers implemented it last night. Miss Myers? Of course. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. And they didn't bother to tell me. Melissa lowered her eyes. There was an internal memo sent at midnight. It said you were copied. I checked my email. There it was, time-stamped 12:47 a.m., signed by Catherine. Subject, new reporting channels for FY operations. The message was polite, professional, and cold as marble. I scrolled to the end and froze when I saw the final line. Effective immediately, all financial reports and projections will be reviewed by the executive committee chaired by Mr. Randy Stonefield. Mr. Wiley Stonefield's role will be transitioned to special advisory status for strategic partnerships. Translated, I'd been quietly stripped of my authority. That afternoon, I stormed into Randy's office. He was on the phone laughing, but when he saw me, the smile slipped. "Hey, bro," he said, covering the receiver. "Can this wait? I'm in the middle of a call." "No," I said. "It can't." He sighed, excused himself from the call, and leaned back in his chair. "All right, what's this about?" "You tell me," I said, tossing a printed copy of the email onto his desk. "You went behind my back and gutted my department." He glanced at it, then shrugged. "You're overreacting. It's just an organizational adjustment." "An adjustment. You removed every financial division from under my management. You made me an advisor in my own company. It's our company, Wiley, and you still have a role." "Don't you dare," I snapped. "Don't you pretend this is about teamwork. This is Catherine's doing, isn't it?" His jaw tightened. "Kat's just trying to make things more efficient. She's trying to control you. Don't start this again." I stepped closer. "Randy, you're letting her poison everything we built." For a second, I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Then it hardened. "Maybe the problem isn't her, Wiley. Maybe it's that you can't handle not being the smartest guy in the room anymore." That hit deeper than I wanted to admit. "Get out of my office," he said quietly. So I did. And as I walked away, I realized I wasn't losing just my position. I was losing my brother, one decision at a time. The next few weeks blurred into a cycle of long nights and short tempers. Catherine's influence spread through the company like wildfire. Her voice echoed in every meeting, every decision, every press release. The board adored her. Investors praised her efficiency. The staff called her the Iron Orchid, beautiful, but impossible to touch. I tried to fight back quietly, but every attempt was blocked before it began. Memos got lost. Meetings were rescheduled. Proposals I drafted never reached the boardroom. It was like being slowly erased. One night, I stayed late to review the internal ledger. As I cross-checked the accounts, something didn't add up. A series of transfers, small, precise, recurring, routed through shell subsidiaries we hadn't used in years. On paper, they looked like operational costs. But the destinations were blurred under consulting fees. I printed everything and brought it to Randy first thing the next morning. He barely glanced at the pages. "Wiley, these are standard disbursements." "No, they're not. Look at the amounts, exactly $187,500 every quarter. That's not a coincidence. Someone's moving money quietly through defunct branches." He sighed. "You're seeing ghosts." "Kat already reviewed this." "Of course she did," I said bitterly. "She's the one writing the script." That was the first time he looked at me with something close to disgust. "You really can't stand her, can you? Just because she doesn't bow to your spreadsheets. Because she's manipulating you." He stood up, voice rising. "Enough. You're acting paranoid, Wiley. If you can't trust me, maybe you should take some time off." "Time off?" "Yeah," he said, looking away. "Maybe you need some perspective." I laughed, a short broken sound. "You mean exile?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The next day, my access to the company's server was revoked for security reasons. I sat in my apartment staring at the blank login screen, feeling the weight of every choice I hadn't made, every time I'd let Randy take the spotlight, every time I'd chosen silence over confrontation. It was Catherine's brilliance, really. She didn't attack me directly. She just made me invisible. And invisibility is the easiest way to kill someone's power. A week later, I got an invitation, Stonefield Group Annual Gala. Same ballroom, same chandeliers. The irony almost made me laugh. I thought about not going, but part of me wanted to see how far the rot had spread. When I arrived, the event was already in full swing. Flashbulbs, champagne, laughter, all the things that made the world believe the Stonefields were untouchable. Then I saw them, Randy and Catherine, standing together under the golden light, every inch the perfect couple. Her dress shimmered like molten gold, and his hand rested on her back possessively. As they moved through the crowd, I noticed something else. People no longer looked at me. The whispers, the greetings, the smiles all went to them. I was just a ghost orbiting my own name. "Mr. Stonefield," someone said behind me. I turned to see Alan Pierce, one of our senior partners, shifting awkwardly. "Didn't expect to see you tonight." "Neither did I said dryly. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Listen, off the record. People are saying there's talk of restructuring the executive board. Randy might be proposing a new COO. My stomach dropped. "Who?" He gave me a look that said everything. I didn't have to ask. Later that night, Randy took the stage to give his speech. Cameras flashed as he thanked investors, partners, and the bright future of Stonefield Group. Then he turned to Catherine. "And I'd like to introduce someone who has transformed not just our company, but our vision for what leadership means. Please welcome our new Chief Operating Officer, Ms. Catherine Myers." The room erupted in applause. I felt something inside me crack. Not anger, not even shock, just emptiness. She stepped forward, smiling gracefully, her eyes briefly finding mine across the crowd. And in that single glance, I saw it: victory. She'd won. Randy stood beside her, oblivious, basking in the glow of admiration. I realized then that Catherine didn't just want influence. She wanted legacy, and she would burn everything to get it. After the event, I left without saying goodbye. I walked for blocks through the rain, the city lights blurring around me like smudged memories. When I finally reached my apartment, I poured a drink and sat in the dark. The rain hit the windows in steady rhythm like a heartbeat. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You were right about the transfers. She's been cleaning funds through Horizon. Meet me tomorrow. 9 a.m., Bryant Park, North Corner." No name, no explanation, but it was enough to make something flicker back to life inside me, the part of me that refused to be erased. The next morning, I arrived early. The park was half empty, the air sharp with the smell of wet grass and espresso from nearby carts. At exactly 9, a man in a gray coat sat beside me. I recognized him, Eric Lang, former head of compliance. He'd resigned 2 months ago under personal reasons. "I didn't expect you to reach out," I said quietly. "I shouldn't have," he replied, eyes scanning the distance. "But I've been following the transactions. You were right. Something's off. Catherine set up dummy vendors under Horizon's subsidiaries. Money's been moving offshore." "Where?" He hesitated. "A shell company in the Cayman Islands. Guess whose name is on it?" I didn't need to guess. "Randy's," I said. Eric nodded. "But that's the trick. He doesn't know. It's listed under his personal authorization code, the one only she has access to." My hands tightened. So she's framing him, or setting him up for something bigger. He handed me a USB drive. "Everything I've found is on here. But be careful. They'll come after you if they know you have it." Before I could respond, he stood and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I sat there for a long time, staring at the drive in my hand. For the first time in months, the fog lifted. Catherine hadn't just turned Randy against me, she was building a noose around his neck. And if I didn't stop her, she'd take the company, destroy my brother, and walk away clean. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Not anymore. That night, I opened the files. Transaction logs, fake invoices, offshore statements, all connecting back to her. But she'd hidden them well buried under layers of encrypted metadata. I worked until dawn, tracing her digital fingerprints like a detective chasing ghosts. Each discovery felt like oxygen, each pattern another piece of the truth. By sunrise, I had enough to see the outline of her plan. She was transferring capital under Randy's name to build leverage, financial, legal, and emotional. The next step would be public exposure, probably to remove him from his position and claim the company's trust for herself. It was brilliant, ruthless. And if I hadn't loved my brother, I might have even admired it. When I confronted Randy 2 days later, he didn't even let me finish. "You're obsessed, Wiley," he said. "I don't know what you're trying to prove." "I'm trying to save you," I said. "Catherine's laundering money under your name. She's setting you up." He laughed, cold, tired. "You really think she needs to? You're the one hacking servers and stealing files. You've lost it. I have proof." "Then take it to the board," he snapped. "Let's see who they believe, the paranoid little brother or me." I stared at him, unable to breathe. "You'd really do that?" He looked away. "You already did it to yourself." When I walked out of his office, I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt something colder, a strange calm, like the moment before a storm breaks. He had made his choice. Now I would make mine. If she wanted to play with fire, I'd give her an inferno. But this time, I wouldn't be the one burning. There's a strange calm that comes right before your world collapses. A silence that feels almost merciful, like the universe giving you one last breath before it crushes your ribs. For me, that silence lasted exactly 2 days. 2 days between the moment Randy told me to take it to the board and the morning I woke up to find my name smeared across every financial headline in New York. Stonefield Group, under investigation, CFO suspected of fraud. Younger brother accused of embezzlement in billion-dollar real estate firm. Family empire faces internal scandal. It was like watching my own obituary unfold on screen. My phone exploded with calls. Journalists, lawyers, old friends who suddenly remembered my number. I ignored them all. My hands shook as I scrolled through the articles. They had details, alleged offshore accounts, falsified ledgers, insider transactions. Every source was anonymous, but the story was airtight. Someone had built it carefully, too carefully. And every trail led to me. I called Randy. He didn't pick up, so I drove straight to headquarters. The lobby was chaos, security reporters' flashes. I pushed through the noise and went up to the 47th floor. My ID didn't work anymore. "Mr. Stonefield," the guard said nervously, "your access has been suspended." I stared at him, numb. "Suspended on whose order?" He hesitated. "Ms. Myers." "Of course." I found Randy in the boardroom, surrounded by executives and legal advisors. Catherine stood at his side, immaculate as ever, black suit, white blouse, calm eyes. When I burst in, the room went dead silent. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, slamming the newspaper onto the table. Randy looked up, his face unreadable. Wiley. No, you don't get to Wiley me right now. You leaked this. His voice was low. We didn't leak anything. The auditors found inconsistencies in your accounts. My accounts. Randy, those numbers were planted. You know me better than that. Catherine spoke softly, like a surgeon delivering bad news. The documents came from your system, Wiley. Access logs confirm your credentials were used to authorize the transfers. I turned to her. Because you had them. You've had access since you implemented that new security protocol. She smiled faintly. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. Randy stood up. Enough. I looked at him, at the man who'd once been my brother, my friend, my compass. You really believe I'd steal from the company our father built? He hesitated just long enough for the air to change. Then I don't know what to believe anymore. And that was worse than a yes. Within an hour, I was escorted out of the building by security. The board temporarily suspended me pending investigation. My company email was deleted, my office locked. By evening, reporters were camped outside my apartment. My neighbors looked at me like I was contagious. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was Randy that he'd call, that he'd say he knew it wasn't true. He never did. A week later, the formal charges came in financial misconduct, embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty. Catherine had handed over evidence, transaction records, signed approvals, and encrypted correspondence, all pointing directly to me. They even had my signature. I sat in my lawyer's office, staring at the stack of papers. This is impossible, I muttered. These signatures are forged. He sighed. If they are, she covered her tracks perfectly. The metadata matches your device. It's textbook digital laundering. Whoever did this knows what they're doing. I know exactly who did it, I said quietly. He looked at me. Then you better have proof, because right now they have the narrative. In the weeks that followed, I watched my life unravel piece by piece. Stonefield Group released a statement distancing itself from me. My accounts were frozen, my reputation was gone. Even my mother stopped calling. She sent one message, short, trembling. Wheelie, please tell me it isn't true. I couldn't even answer. Because how do you explain to your own mother that the son she's proud of is being buried alive by his own brother and the woman he loves? Catherine's brilliance was in her precision. She didn't destroy me overnight. She let me die slowly. Every week brought a new leak, a new story. Sources close to the investigation hinted at my gambling debts. I had none. An anonymous insider claimed I'd siphoned company funds to cover personal losses. It was masterful lies laced with just enough truth to sound believable. And Randy? He played the grieving brother, the reluctant CEO forced to clean up the family name. I watched his interviews on TV, the way his voice broke, just enough to sound sincere. She's helping me through this, he said once, glancing at Catherine beside him. I don't know what I'd do without her. I threw the remote at the screen. For a while, I thought about disappearing, taking what little I had left, and vanishing somewhere no one could find me. But then one night as I was packing, I found the USB drive Eric Lang had given me. It was still there, buried under a pile of unopened mail. I plugged it in. The files loaded slowly, encrypted records, offshore transfers, shell corporations. All the proof I needed. But there was one folder I hadn't seen before. Confidential, RST. I opened it. Inside were voice memos recordings. The first one played automatically, Randy's voice. We'll move the capital under the Cayman subsidiary. It'll look cleaner that way. Then Catherine's, don't worry, I'll handle the paperwork. Wiley won't even notice until it's over. My blood ran cold. I sat there in silence, listening to the people I'd loved most, casually plotting my destruction, like it was a business decision. By the time the last recording ended, my hands were trembling, not with anger, but with clarity. The next morning I called Eric. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. So I went to his apartment. The door was slightly open. Inside, everything was overturned drawers, emptied, papers scattered, computer gone. And on the floor near the desk, a broken coffee mug. No Eric, just silence. I left immediately. Someone had gotten to him. That was the night I stopped being naive. They hadn't just wanted me gone. They wanted me erased. And that's when I decided if they wanted war, I'd give them one. But I wouldn't fight them on their terms. They had money, power, influence. I had something they didn't, the truth and the patience to weaponize it. I started small. Anonymous emails to journalists, quiet leaks to investigators. I rewired my digital footprint, created firewalls of aliases, traced every move they made through public filings and encrypted data leaks. Every night I sat in the dark with a laptop hunting the ghosts they thought they'd buried. It wasn't about revenge anymore, not entirely. It was about balance. About showing them that no empire built on betrayal stands forever. And as I dug deeper, I began to see Catherine's full plan unfold: the merger, the offshore accounts, the political donors she'd bought to protect Randy's image, while she tightened her grip behind the scenes. Randy thought he was the king. He didn't realize he was just her pawn. One night, I intercepted an internal memo from her private server. It was a draft half-written, unsent, but damning. Subject Horizon Liquidation Plan. To Board of Directors. Private following recent financial discrepancies, I recommend immediate restructuring under Executive Emergency Clause. Randy Stonefield to step down pending review. Interim control to transfer to COO myself. There it was, the endgame. She was about to do to him what she'd done to me, only this time she'd bury him completely. And that's when something inside me shifted. I'd wanted to destroy her. But now I realized I could save him too. Even after everything he'd done, part of me still couldn't stop being his brother. The next morning, I disguised my IP address and sent Randy an anonymous email. She's setting you up. Check the Horizon transfer folder, authorization code 7X93L. He didn't reply, but I knew he got it, because that night the company network lit up with emergency access logs. Randy had entered the folder. 3 hours later, his phone called mine. When I answered, there was silence at first. Then just his voice, raw, shaking. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," I said quietly. "You finally saw what she's been doing." He exhaled a sound halfway between disbelief and guilt. "Wiley. I think you're right. She used my name, my accounts." "I tried to tell you." "I know," he said softly. "I know." For the first time in months, there was something almost human in his voice. Then he whispered, "What do we do now?" We met in secret 2 nights later in the old family warehouse our father had used before the company went public. It was almost poetic, the two brothers standing among the bones of the empire they'd built. Randy looked wrecked. The charming, confident man was gone. "She's got everything," he said. "The board trusts her. The investors love her. If I accuse her, she'll turn it back on me." "Then we don't accuse her," I said. "We expose her." He frowned. "How?" I slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies of the recordings, the offshore records, the forged signatures, everything. "We go public. Together. Stonefield brothers against the fraud. You'll step down temporarily, claim accountability, then hand over evidence to the authorities. She'll try to spin it, but once it's out there, she's finished." He stared at me, eyes glassy. "You'd really do this for me after everything?" I hesitated. "You're still my brother Randy." For a moment, it felt like we were kids again, the world outside, the two of us unbreakable. But somewhere deep down, I knew it wasn't over. People like Catherine don't lose quietly. The next morning, Randy called a press conference. He was calm, composed, rehearsed, just like our father had taught us. He announced that Stonefield Group was conducting an internal audit after discovering potential irregularities. Catherine stood behind him, smiling politely, unaware that her empire was about to crack. Until Randy said, "We believe the discrepancies stem from unauthorized offshore activity conducted by parties within the executive team." Her smile froze, and in that instant she knew. Afterward, I left the warehouse to grab air, my chest tight with adrenaline. My phone buzzed, a single text from an unknown number. "Nice move. But you should have killed the queen first." And then a second later, the explosion. The warehouse went up in flames. I turned back screaming Randy's name, but the fire swallowed the sound. Security cameras later called it a gas leak, but I knew better. Catherine never lost quietly. That night, I stood across the river watching the fire consume everything we'd ever built, family, loyalty, legacy. And as the reflection burned in the water, I made myself a promise. She took my brother, my name, my life. Now I'll take her truth. The news said it was a gas leak. A tragic accident that killed Randy Stonefield, beloved CEO of Stonefield Group, and an unnamed associate. They never found the second body. That was the point. I watched the live broadcast from a motel 2 hours north of Manhattan. The flames reflected in the static of the old television, and for a moment, I couldn't tell if I was mourning my brother or the version of him I used to believe in. The world saw a tragedy. I saw a message. Catherine's message. She wanted me to know she'd finished what she started, but she didn't know she'd failed. The blast threw me clear through a broken sidewall. I don't remember much, just heat light and Randy's voice shouting my name before the roof came down. When I woke up, everything hurt. My ribs cracked, my leg burned, my hands bled. But I was alive. Barely. Somehow that felt like both a curse and a calling. I disappeared that night. No credit cards. No calls, no traces. I became nothing, a ghost living in the cracks of the digital world. Eric Lang had taught me one thing before he vanished. If you can't win above ground, live below it. I took that advice literally. I rented a forgotten storage unit under a fake name in Queens, filled it with salvaged computer parts, and built my war room from scratch. 3 monitors, 2 laptops, 1 unstable internet connection. That was all I needed. The first step was to resurrect myself. To the world, Wiley Stonefield was dead. That meant I could move freely, but it also meant every file tied to me was wiped clean. So I created new ones. Alias Miles Harlow. Occupation Data Security Consultant. Cover firm Helios Cyber Defense Inc. A shell company I coded overnight and registered offshore through layered proxies. From that point on, every keystroke I made belonged to Miles. Stonefield Group had tightened its security after the explosion. Firewalls, biometric access, encrypted networks, all built under Catherine's direction. But she'd made one mistake: she underestimated ghosts. Using archived credentials, backdoor protocols I'd written years ago, and fragments of Randy's voice recordings, I started slipping back in, slowly, quietly. At first, I only monitored her, watched the new empire she was building on the ashes of the old one. She was CEO now, publicly grieving, privately unstoppable. Charities, interviews, new deals, the widowed visionary who had overcome tragedy to lead Stonefield Group into a new era. And the public loved her. They always love a good survivor story. But beneath that, I saw her true moves. She was selling off assets quietly, strategically, shifting company shares into untraceable holding groups, one layer after another, all leading back to something called Nemesis Holdings Limited. The name meant nothing at first, but the more I dug, the more it reeked of her handiwork. Nemesis was her new vault, a shadow corporation that controlled everything the public couldn't see. And I was going to burn it from the inside. The first key came from an old ally I never expected: Vanessa Cho, our father's former legal advisor. She'd resigned after Catherine's rise, quietly disappearing from the corporate scene. When I contacted her anonymously, she responded within an hour. Meet me in person. No emails, no calls. We met in a deserted cafe near the Hudson. She was older, sharper, wearing sunglasses even indoors. "You're supposed to be dead," she said flatly, sliding into the booth. "Let's keep it that way," I answered. She smirked. "I always knew you had more of your father in you than Randy did. What do you know about Nemesis?" She looked around, lowered her voice. "It's her insurance policy. She's funneling assets out of Stonefield Group. Offshore, encrypted, buried under fake directors. She's preparing to abandon the company once she's milked it dry." "Where's it based?" "Geneva. But the servers are in Delaware. She's clever. She keeps the money in Europe, but the data in the States." I nodded slowly. "So if someone got into those servers..." Vanessa finished for me. "She loses everything." That night, I began the infiltration. It took weeks of preparation, building spoof identities, intercepting network traffic, brute-forcing encrypted layers. Every move risked detection, but I'd learned to breathe in risk. And finally, one sleepless dawn, the gate opened. Inside the Nemesis server, I found everything: the ledgers, the wire transfers, the offshore accounts, and one more folder titled RS Protocol. When I opened it, I froze. It was a dossier on me. Every photograph, every email, every message I'd ever sent. Labeled, timestamped, annotated. She'd been tracking me for years, even before the scandal. And at the end of the file, a single line of text: "If he ever becomes a threat, terminate." I leaned back in my chair, my pulse hammering. She hadn't just destroyed me for convenience. She'd planned it. From the start. I copied everything to a secure drive, encrypted it twice, and buried the trail. Then I reached out to my last remaining friend inside the company, Marla Jensen, head of internal IT. She'd always respected me, and she hated Catherine's arrogance. Using my Miles alias, I approached her with a security audit proposal. She didn't recognize me at first. But when she saw the evidence packet I sent, partial fragments of Nemesis, she replied in less than 5 minutes. "Who are you? And how do you have this?" "Someone who wants to see the truth come out," I answered. She agreed to help quietly, cautiously. Together, we set up a timed network trigger, a digital chain reaction that would copy the entire Nemesis database and send it to regulatory agencies, financial watchdogs, and the media simultaneously. We called it the Mirror Protocol because once it started, Catherine would be forced to face herself. But timing was everything. If we triggered it too soon, she'd bury it. Too late, she'd vanish with the money. So I waited, watching, listening, tracking her every move. Until one night, I caught something I hadn't expected. An encrypted video file uploaded to the Stonefield Group server marked Memorial Address. Curious, I decrypted it. It was Catherine sitting in her office rehearsing a speech. Randy Stonefield was more than a leader. He was my partner, my compass. In his memory, Stonefield Group will launch a new charitable division investing in sustainable housing worldwide. Her voice cracked, slightly fake but practiced. Then she looked directly into the camera and said something that wasn't part of the script. "To my dear Wiley, wherever you are, I hope you finally made peace." I felt my stomach twist. She knew. Within hours, I tore apart every line of my firewall. Somehow she'd traced me. Then right before midnight, the power in my unit flickered. A soft hum filled the room, the sound of a nearby transmitter pinging my connection. She'd found me. I grabbed my hard drives, stuffed them into a bag, and bolted. By the time I hit the street, a black SUV was pulling up at the far end of the block. I ran. Through alleys, across bridges, down into the subway. My ribs screamed with every breath, but I didn't stop. The only thing that mattered was the drive, the proof. The ghost couldn't die again. I disappeared into the underground for 3 days. Slept in train stations. ate vending machine food. Every noise sounded like her footsteps. But when the panic faded, I realized something. If she'd found me, it meant she was afraid. And fear made her sloppy. Marla reached out again. They know something's coming. She's been pulling overnight meetings. If we're going to do this, it has to be now. So we did it. At 3:17 a.m., I logged in through a hijacked access port and activated the mirror protocol. Marla triggered the relay inside the mainframe. And for the first time in months, I smiled. Every file, every transfer, every forged signature, all of it started duplicating across global news networks. By dawn, the headlines exploded. Stonefield Group's secret holdings exposed CEO. Implicated in offshore laundering scandal. Evidence suggests fraud linked to late Randy Stonefield's estate. Whistleblower leaks massive data on corporate corruption. I watched it unfold from a diner window, coffee growing cold in my hands. And for the first time, I felt something like justice. But then the phone on the table rang. An unknown number. I answered. Hello, Wiley. Catherine's voice purred. Calm, too calm. I froze. How did you really think I didn't see this coming? I built that network. I knew someone would try to use it against me. She paused, then added, I let you win this round. What are you talking about? I already moved the money. The leaks are useless without the last key, and guess who has it? Her voice turned cold. You can burn my name, my company, my image, but I still own the one thing you never will. I clenched the phone. What's that? Your brother's death certificate. Then the line went dead. That night, I hacked into the National Records System. And she was right. Randy's death certificate had been classified under national security exemption. Not medical, not private, classified. Which meant one thing: he hadn't died in that explosion. The realization hit like a knife. Everything. The setup, the explosion, her sudden confidence. It all made sense now. She hadn't killed him. She'd taken him. And that changed everything. Because if Randy was alive, that meant the game wasn't over. For weeks, I hunted every trace: shell accounts, hidden hospitals, private transport logs. Until finally I found a name that appeared twice in both her files and Randy's death record. Blackridge Institute, a private psychiatric facility in upstate New York. The same place she'd once mentioned in passing as where my father used to donate. It was perfect. Remote, untouchable. Owned through layers of shell companies, including, of course, Nemesis Holdings. I knew what I had to do. The ghost had to come back to life. Not to reclaim the company, not for revenge, but to find my brother and end the cycle once and for all. You can't kill a ghost twice. But you can make him remember what it means to be alive. That thought echoed in my head as I stood outside the gates of Blackridge Institute, the wind howling through the pines like a warning. The facility sat on a hill, overlooking a frozen lake, silent, clinical, untouchable. It didn't look like a hospital. It looked like a vault built to hold secrets, and somewhere inside my brother. I'd spent the last 2 weeks planning this. Fake credentials, falsified security badges, and a fabricated work order under Helios Cyber Defense. The name had gotten me through checkpoints before. At 10:03 p.m., I parked a borrowed van by the service entrance and flashed my ID to the guard. System audit, I said, handing over the clipboard. Routine check. Shouldn't take long. He barely looked at it. Make it quick. Night shift doesn't like surprises. Neither did I. Inside the hallways were white and narrow, the air too clean, too still. Every step echoed. Every camera blinked red. I moved fast, my route memorized through the east corridor, down the restricted stairwell, past the medical wing marked private care. According to the stolen files, patient R031 was kept in isolation. No visitors, no record of release. But his medical scans were recent. Randy was alive. When I reached the door marked R031, my hand hesitated on the handle. For months, I'd imagined this moment, finding him, saving him, maybe even forgiving him. But now, with my heart pounding in my throat, I realized I didn't know what I'd find. The man inside might not be my brother anymore. The lock clicked open. The room was dim, lit only by a single fluorescent bulb. And there he was, sitting in a wheelchair, staring at the window that didn't open. Randy Stonefield. Alive. His hair was shorter, his frame thinner, but it was him. My brother. Randy? I whispered. He turned slowly. For a moment, confusion flickered in his eyes, then disbelief, then something like fear. Wiley. His voice cracked. You're dead. I stepped forward, my throat tightening. Not yet. He stared at me, trembling. She told me you died in the fire. She told everyone that. He tried to stand, but his knees buckled. I caught him before he fell. His hands were cold, trembling like someone who hadn't felt sunlight in years. What did she do to you? I asked quietly. He looked away. She said I had a breakdown, that I caused the explosion. She brought me here to recover. He gave a bitter laugh. Some recovery. How long have you been here? I don't know, he whispered. Time doesn't move here. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the flash drive, the one holding everything. The mirror protocol. The recordings, the evidence. She's finished, I said. I leaked everything. The whole world knows. He looked at me, something dark flickering in his gaze. You don't understand. She's always one step ahead. What do you mean? She came here last week, he said. Told me if you ever came back, she'd end it herself. That this time she wouldn't miss. That's when the door behind me opened. And there she was. Catherine, flawless as ever, dark coat, gloved hands, the faintest smile. Always dramatic, Wiley, she said softly, even in hospitals. My pulse spiked. You really don't give up, do you? I could say the same about you. Her eyes flicked to Randy. How touching. The brothers reunited. I'd almost cry if it wasn't such a waste. Let him go. She tilted her head. You think I came all this way to negotiate? Randy stepped forward weakly. Catherine, please, don't do this. Oh, sweetheart, she said, voice dripping with mock sympathy. You already did this. You just didn't have the stomach to finish it. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small pistol, sleek, silence, deliberate. Step aside, Wiley, she said calmly. You weren't supposed to survive. This time, let's fix that. For a second, everything froze. Her finger tightened on the trigger, but before she could shoot, Randy lunged forward. The gun went off. The sound was muffled, but the pain wasn't. I hit the floor, the world spinning. The bullet grazed my shoulder, burning hot. Randy shouted something, and another shot rang out louder, closer. Then silence. When I looked up, Catherine was on the ground. The gun lay beside her, smoke curling from the barrel. Randy stood over her, breathing hard, the weapon still in his shaking hand. I told you, he whispered. You don't get to hurt my brother again. Her lips twitched into a bitter smile. You think you're saving him? Her voice cracked. You never understood, Randy. You were never the heir. You were the obstacle. Then her eyes went still. He stood there for a long time, staring at her body, then at me. I forced myself up, clutching my bleeding arm. She's gone, I said quietly. He nodded slowly. I didn't mean to. I know. For the first time, there was peace in his eyes. But beneath it, guilt, deep, unshakable guilt. She was right about one thing, he murmured. The company. It made us monsters. Maybe, I said, but we can still end it. We left her there together. By the time the sirens reached the hill, we were gone, two shadows disappearing into the snow. Weeks passed. Investigations consumed the headlines. Catherine's death was ruled a suicide. The leaked files dismantled Nemesis Stonefield Group and half a dozen corrupt networks around it. The empire fell just like it should have. But victory didn't feel like triumph, it felt like exhaustion. Randy and I stayed off the grid, moving from place to place, trying to rebuild something that felt human. Sometimes we talked about the past, our father, our childhood, the first time we dreamed of running the company together. And sometimes we didn't talk at all. One night, while we were sitting by a lake somewhere in Vermont, Randy said quietly, "She destroyed everything we had." I looked at him. "No, we did. We let her." He nodded, eyes on the dark water. "You ever think we deserved it?" I thought about that for a long time, then said maybe. But we're still here. That means we still get to choose who we become next. He smiled faintly. "You sound like Dad." Maybe I finally listened to him. Months later, I got a letter. No return address. Just a single line written in elegant handwriting. "You can kill the queen, but the game never ends." No signature. Just the faint smell of her perfume. For days I couldn't sleep. Was it paranoia, a prank, or something more? I ran checks. No data trail, no fingerprints, no trace. Maybe she had a contingency. Maybe she wasn't dead. Or maybe ghosts leave echoes long after they're gone. In the end, I burned the letter and watched the ash scatter into the wind, because I realized something. The war wasn't about money or power or revenge. It was about truth and the cost of burying it. And for the first time, I didn't want to bury anything anymore. Randy found me standing by the fire. He said, "You think we'll ever be normal again?" I looked at him. My brother, my mirror, my reminder of everything I'd lost, and everything I still had. "Normal," I said quietly. "No, but maybe honest." He nodded, and for the first time since the fire, we laughed. As the flames died down, the world felt strangely quiet, not peaceful, not empty, just real. And maybe that was enough. Because in the end, the truth doesn't save you. It just sets you free. I'm Booze, and Gwen, and these are real stories told by those who lived them. Subscribe if you're ready for the next truth. If this story made you think twice, hit that subscribe button. The next one might just break you. Thanks for staying till the end. Every week I uncover another story the world tried to forget.